Hello and welcome to today's meeting of Democrats of Greater Tucson. My name is Larry Bodine. I'm the president and I will be your host today. I want to introduce Kirsten Engel to you. Kirsten, as you probably know, is a mom, an environmental attorney, and a Democratic state legislator who has spent the last 5 years in both the Arizona House and Senate fighting for full funding of public schools, protecting Arizona's resources, and making our communities safer. Today, she's running to be our next Congress member in Tucson in Congressional District 6. Her career includes working as an environmental lawyer, college professor, associate dean at the University of Arizona College of Law. And Kirsten is totally in sync with what the voters want. She's been fighting for reproductive rights, protecting the environment, working towards a sustainable future, building an economy that works for everybody, expanding access to affordable health care, and, important to me, strengthening Social Security and Medicare. And with that, Kirsten, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you again for having me and being out there during this long build-up to the final act here in our 2020 election, the general election, which is really sneaking up on us very, very quickly. So I would like to start by just kind of presenting a bit of a contrast about, what a difference just a couple of months can make in our political world, as well as our prospects for success here in November. So just 2 months, a little bit more than 2 months away, we were all reeling from Roe versus Wade being repealed, the Dobbs decision. Not only that, we were dealing with rampant inflation, 9%, high gas prices, over $5. A general sort of, media blitz over and over again. The Democrats can't accomplish anything in Congress. The Build Back Better plan is mired in the Senate, can't get the votes. So there was, Democrats, it looks like there's just absolutely no way they can hold on to the U.S. House. Maybe they can pull out the holding on to the Senate majority, but the House, it's all but lost. And, for me personally, that was a tough time. We did think we could pull off a win in the primary, but, my Democratic opponent was talking about a poll he had where he was many points ahead of me. So fast forward to now, and I think things are looking a lot different. First of all, we have Kansas. Okay, we still have the Dobbs decision repealing Roe versus Wade. We still have our Attorney General who is insisting that a territorial law from 1864 that criminalizes abortion is in effect. But what we also have is tangible evidence that the voters care. And Kansas was a really, really important signal to people out there, especially to us here in Arizona, about what we can do in the legislature and especially in Congress, that the majority of the voters here, this was Kansas, a state that Trump won easily, and a overwhelming majority voting to reject that constitutional amendment to take away reproductive health care rights. That was otherwise, that right was enshrined in their constitution. The Inflation Reduction Act passed in the Senate and was signed by President Biden, $360 billion going into addressing climate change, the largest investment ever by the United States in addressing this issue. And also including another really big objective of the Democrats, which was to enable Medicare to be able to negotiate the price of prescription drugs. Now, certainly not as broad as many of us would want, and not happening as quickly as many of us would want, but getting across the finish line there to at least start that process, give that authority to Medicare. Inflation is down, gas prices are down. I did not lose the Democratic primary by 10 points. Instead, actually, I won the Democratic primary by almost 25 points. And I think importantly, we did, as soon as we won the primary, we did commission a poll by Anna Greenberg's firm, which is a very well considered polling firm in New York. And I am happy to announce that I am 2 points ahead of my Republican opponent, Juan Ciscomani. So obviously not a very, very big margin, but one we absolutely need to expand. But considering how this district has been reconfigured in the redistricting process to lean Republican in terms of voter registration, I think it is really, really important. And we are getting the national attention now, I believe largely because of this poll, as well as the other things that are going on nationally. And our race was recently listed by the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee as a red to blue district. And what that is a list of districts across the country that are must-win districts for the Democrats, but highly, highly competitive. So the idea is to direct voters all over the country toward helping out our race by donating, by helping us get out the vote, by sending volunteers our way. It's a very, very important signal. The only other district besides this district, Congressional District 6, which is listed in Arizona on that list, is Jevin Hodges' race up in Phoenix against Schweikert. Another really high priority, if we can flip that district, and I think we can, really important. So obviously we've got a long way to go. And I just, every chance I get, I emphasize the importance of this race, both locally to our constituents here, but also nationally, because it is part of keeping that Democratic majority. And whether or not we are able to keep the majority may come down to whether or not I win the race in November. And to say it a little bit more concretely, if I lose, it's possible the Republicans could win the majority in the US House. Kevin McCarthy could be our speaker. We know that the January 6th commission would be disbanded. We know that the Republicans would likely impeach President Biden. They very likely to pass a national abortion ban, undercut voting rights on the national level, as opposed to doing the opposite of which is what we want, which is on the national level to shore up and guarantee our voting rights, especially given our challenges in the Arizona legislature. But if I win, chances are we can keep that Democratic majority and we can keep on fighting on issues of healthcare, abortion rights, climate change, voting rights, and so many other important Democratic priorities. So, as you all know my background. I'm not a new figure in these circles. As you know, my background, teach environmental law at the University of Arizona. Since I've been in the legislature, I've added courses to my curriculum over there, now teaching undergraduate students on the legislative process. We need more folks who are truly schooled and understanding how they can influence our electoral politics. And, now having served 2 terms in the Arizona House and 1 in the Senate, I feel like I have a lot of experience to bring to this congressional race. And as far as my platform is concerned, I'll just elaborate a little bit upon what Larry said as an introduction. First and foremost, I am committed to guaranteeing women's fundamental freedom. It is a freedom to make their own health care decisions, their own decisions about whether or not they want to follow through with a risky or unwanted pregnancy. And I believe strongly we have to respect people who are pregnant to make those decisions for themselves, with their family, with their doctor, with their religious advisor, whomever they wish to confide. And this is not an area for government mandates or government interference. And we know the larger agenda here from the Republicans is not just to undercut these reproductive health care rights, it's also to undercut other rights that have been protected by privacy in the Constitution, from contraceptive use to marrying who you love and who you wish to other rights. So this is, as far as I'm concerned, the nose of the camel under the tent. And we need to stand strong on this issue. And I am committed to working on codifying Roe in Congress and working to protect these other privacy rights. As a woman myself, as a mom of a teenage daughter, these issues are very personal to me and to so many, obviously. But I do feel like I have a voice that I believe people will listen to me on this. Water issues. And we know that we are right now reeling from issues of drought, a long-term mega drought that we're in. We're seeing a real crisis on the Colorado River. This is not new. We've been talking about this as Democrats for a couple decades. Many of us have been working on this in the legislature, trying to get water conservation measures, water reuse, working on all kinds of things that would use our water more efficiently. And it's not just the Colorado River either, it's also our groundwater. And this legislative district really deals with both of those. We're very reliant in parts of this district, like in Tucson on the Colorado River, but there's other parts of this congressional district that are very reliant upon groundwater, and those groundwater tables are dropping, and homeowners, small businesses are literally running out of water and cannot afford to, build a deeper well to compete with some of the corporate farming and ranching interests that have come in and are really pumping out a lot of that water. Foreign interests, kind of incredible that we have Saudi Arabia renting land from our state land department, pumping out our water to grow alfalfa and then shipping that back to feed cattle in Saudi Arabia. These are the types of things that are wasteful and bad policy and need to be worked on the state level, but I think we can also work on them on the federal level. We also know that these are being driven by climate change, the drought, and this is something I'm committed to working on policies. We have a great opportunity here in Arizona. I often say we should be the Persian Gulf of solar. And finally, we're seeing that kind of investment in the federal government. We got to make sure that Arizona gets that investment from the federal government so that we are able to really expand upon our generation of renewable energy and transition to clean energy. And there's many, many things on the agenda that are fundamental that Congress needs to do, especially with respect to filling out and working on our grid infrastructure to be able to bring on that renewable energy. Other issues that I'm very committed to is protecting our voting rights. Voters need to decide elections, not politicians. This is something I stood strong on in the Arizona legislature and very much support bills in Congress, from the Freedom to Vote Act to the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, to make sure that voting rights are not undercut at the state level. And finally, Social Security and Medicare. These are earned benefits. They provide such stability for our seniors. They are fundamental to helping our society, and along with continuing to support education, we need to continue to make sure that we support Social Security and Medicare and do not let the Republicans privatize these programs or subject them to, continuing having to be authorized on a yearly basis. That's the latest Republican ploy to try to undercut these programs. So I think probably, there's a lot to talk about, and I'd be happy to talk to you about any questions you have. I know I've barely touched on all the many issues that are at stake here in this important election. I would just say in conclusion that this district has been held by strong Democratic women, from Gabby Giffords to Ann Kirkpatrick. And I would be proud to bring my experience as a mom, as a environmental attorney and teacher, and as a former state legislator to work for the people of this district. So thank you so much, and look forward to your questions.
Stephen Mizell, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
First, I thought you said regarding, well, most points, but particular, your points regarding the water issue, I think are very good and appreciate hearing those. But I'd like to get further into that to understand your role, what your position is on desalinization, particularly for the lower southern Arizona.
So the question is on desalinization. As many of you may know, the legislature recently passed I believe, a $1.2 billion appropriation. I think about most of that money is reserved for augmentation of our water supplies, bringing water in from outside, and about 200 million of it is reserved for water conservation. Personally, I would have switched those percentages, so much more of that money would be spent on water conservation and reuse, as opposed to this huge amount of money that is going into proposals for water augmentation. And one of those water augmentation proposals that was discussed is desalinization. I don't want to put off the table any proposal or any option, but I have to say desalinization is extremely expensive and very long-term. If we were to start tomorrow, we wouldn't see a drop of water from desalinization for another 10 years. Right now, we're going into a tier 2A shortage on the Colorado River next year. And we are struggling right now to get the Department of Interior to back up the promise that they made to get all of the basin states together. If they're not going to do it themselves, the Biden administration promised they would get the states together to plan for how to reduce their reliance on the Colorado River, so that, frankly, the river does not drop anymore and the reservoirs do not drop. We don't have much time, and the people who need the water can't afford the cost of the desal water that we would get. The estimates is something like $2,500 per acre feet, when water right now is, to the extent that it's traded in the market, it's about $200 a market fee. That's not reflecting its true cost right now. But these are the concerns that I have. There's issues of how to get the energy. We certainly don't want to make climate change worse by burning a whole lot of fossil fuels in order to create that water. We would definitely, I think, need that water, that desal energy to be coming from solar or wind. And we've got the issue of what to do with the brine that is created. So there's a lot of issues, and it's not surprising that desalinization has not gone forward for a while. And there's a broken down plant that we have in Yuma right now. So that's all to say, maybe people will figure this out. But I think there's so many other things that we should be pursuing that have immediate returns in terms of using our water more efficiently from our farms, from our ranches, and to our cities that are just not being pursued or not being pursued with the sufficient aggressiveness. And of course, I just wrote an op-ed in the Arizona Daily Star about how we absolutely need to get the other states involved, and we're going to need the Biden administration to do it.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's turn now to Barbara Warren. Go ahead, Barbara.
Hi, Kirsten. I wanted to ask you about
Oops, I'm sorry. Oops.
an energy issue that is looking like it might become a weapons issue internationally, and that is nuclear power. And I want to know what your position is on nuclear power, both in this state and what we ought to do about the problems with nuclear power, I guess, across the country. But what is your position on nuclear power?
Well, you're talking about nuclear power for military means or for energy?
For energy.
Means?
For energy, but in Ukraine, it's becoming a military issue, unfortunately. And
Absolutely.
a very dangerous one.
Right, absolutely.
Which highlights the risk of nuclear power overall. But anyway.
Right.
You on this?
Well, nuclear power is it's a difficult issue in that a lot of people are looking at it as an important way to go to, a zero carbon future. I'm not looking to, shut down existing nuclear power plants that are operating safely under their licenses. But I am skeptical, very skeptical about moving ahead with new nuclear power. And I have responded to some questionnaires about this, and I'd be happy to share them with you. It's sort of like desalinization. Nuclear power is unbelievably expensive now in comparison to solar and wind. It has, as you mentioned, the issues of proliferation, that people can use the nuclear materials for weapons. It can be stolen. There's all kinds of security. And of course, we still have not resolved the issue of what to do with nuclear waste. So nuclear waste in all of our nuclear power plants is simply sitting on the facility base. And that isn't very safe for security purposes. It's not safe in terms of the environment. It is really a untenable situation, as we have not been able to figure out a long-term storage plan. So I think that there's all kinds of, again, other alternatives that we should be pursuing. Renewable energy is by far the lowest cost form of energy. So I have to say there are people in the environmental community that have come to me and made a lot of arguments that we should not be shutting the door to some forms of new nuclear power. And I've told them that I'll listen to them, as I think I have the obligation to do, and I certainly want to understand the facts as much as possible. But I think that there's safer and cheaper alternatives.
How about community source energy? Where are you on that? Where we in our communities decide where we get our energy and community sourced energy, it's called, or there's other names for it. But
Oh, that sounds good. And I know that community solar is something that there's more and more interest on. And what we can do on that, I'm not up to speed as to what are the, if there's legal steps that are impeding that right now, and whether or not that would be an issue that we could deal with in Congress. I would love to know more.
Let me turn now to Mike Bryan. Go ahead, Mike, you've got your hand up.
Yeah. Hi, Kirsten.
Hi, Mike.
So here at DGT, we're very interested in inside baseball, and Gail Conemaris asked a question in the chat about that. She wants to know about the new changes in your campaign team now that the DCCC has come on board and apparently sent you some new campaign peoples. And you joined a mission for Arizona. Also, people want an update on how your fundraising is going.
Okay, yes, we are, as a result of being on the red to blue, we've finally attracted the help and attention of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. So in that view, we have a senior advisor that we're working with. We are one of 3 campaigns that this individual is working with. Another campaign in Texas and in New Mexico, I believe, and that's Phil Stein, and he has been very generous with his time. We do have a new person joining us as campaign manager, Sophia Brown, and Robin Van Giesen. We are very hopeful will then lead our outreach, as he has made so many wonderful relationships with all the people here. And that will be kind of our core team. We are fundraising very, very aggressively because we have such a short period of time. We are running against a candidate that it has received a lot of support from persons and organizations and PACs on the Republican side. So we do anticipate this being a very expensive campaign, and we need to fundraise accordingly. We ended when we won the primary, we had about $300,000 in the bank. A lot of that was money that people had donated to us that we could only access if we won the primary. So it became available to us at that time. We've raised several $100,000 since. I don't know that I want to go into all the nitty-gritty details, but we're doing well, but we would welcome your support in our fundraising efforts right now, because as you know, campaigns are expensive. This is a very competitive race. I'm running against a very well-funded Republican candidate.
Chris Hawkins has her hand up. Go ahead, Chris.
Hi, Kirsten. One thing that, okay, I'll try to answer a very simple question, but I do want to modify one thing. So Juan Ciscomani, you've talked about your opponent having lots of money. If we were going to call out the 3 major issues that you find most important to lobby against this guy, we know abortion is one, and this is where I'll say the statement. He changed his mind, and as Blake Masters and others, they, about how they feel about abortion. So I'd like to hear your comments on that. And then what are the other 2? I mean, abortion we know is like a very high level one.
It's a very high level one. Juan Ciscomani cheered the repeal of Roe versus Wade. He is cheering letting politicians ban abortion. He knows that, as well as anyone, that repealing Roe versus Wade opens the door to absolute bans on abortion. And this is unacceptable. And it is one of the scariest parts of the risk that he could win this election. I would also say that just as a general framework on this individual, he is appears to be somebody who has been a yes man in the Ducey administration. He worked for the governor for 7 years as a high-level aide while Ducey was underfunding our schools, doing a horrific job in terms of COVID. This was a top aide. Did we ever hear him objecting to any of these things? Did we ever hear him objecting and sticking up for our public schools, for advocating for more healthy policies for COVID? Did we ever hear him opposing and telling governor not to sign any of those gun bills that weakened measures to protect us from gun violence? No. And we also know that he's on record to, he is against same-sex marriage. So I think this paints a picture of somebody who is extreme, who doesn't care about individual rights, who is willing to go along with the extreme Republican Party and whoever is leading in that party. And as we know from the candidates they've chosen here in Arizona, they have some really extreme characters. So he is anti-abortion. I see no evidence that he's moderate on that at all. He's extremist in other ways, including the issue of same-sex marriage, and he's a yes man for what they want to do. And I would say no reason not to think that he wouldn't completely go along with dismantling Social Security and Medicare, or, you know, privatizing it and various issues like that.
So Kristen, quickly, he has wiped off the part about rape and incest and saving the life of the mother. He is now saying he's all for that. So on his side. So I'm just curious how your campaign wants to handle that. Thank you.
Well, Chris, I think it's the same issue with Blake Masters. You know, if you cheer the repeal of Roe versus Wade and you say nothing for two months, and you know that you know, Arizona is trying to, the Attorney General is insisting that the territorial law is in effect. You know, in other parts of the country, there are no exceptions even for rape or incest. Is that the Juan Ciscomani, or is today's these exceptions? To me, that isn't an acceptable view on the issue of reproductive health care rights. First and foremost, those aren't rights when you're making such narrow exceptions. And I also could say, you know, who is the Juan Ciscomani that you believe? What is he actually going to do when they are in Congress, the Republicans are in charge, and they put up on the board a national abortion ban? Do you really think that Juan Ciscomani is going to vote no?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to vote no. You know, he's an empty suit. He's a wholly owned subsidiary of Doug Ducey. Guy's never spent a day in elected office. So let me turn to another question from Shauna Leonard. Shauna, go right ahead, unmute yourself and ask your question. Just one question.
Sure. Hi. Yeah, so I live in LD20. Our district includes the university and 2 of the PCC campuses. I personally am really involved in some on-the-ground work, tabling, registering, talking to young voters. I just came from one, as a matter of fact. And I'm specifically really interested in the reproductive freedom, reproductive rights, reproductive justice area. And I guess my question is, 2-part. First, what are you doing to reach out specifically to those voters? Is there something your campaign's doing? And secondly, have you considered working with some of the other candidates like Chris Mays, Katie Hobbs, if she comes to Tucson, Priya in District 18, to do some kind of rally or event to educate those voters? Because my feeling is we talk to some young voters who get it. They totally get what can be done to protect their rights right now, but other ones have no clue which part of the government is going to affect what. And I just feel like education will be really helpful to have some outreach united from the campaigns on that, maybe a rally, maybe some kind of thing that's specifically targeting those, voters who don't vote in midterms or new voters. So that's my plea. Would you do something like that? Would you work with some of the other campaigns that way? Or are
Go ahead, Kirsten, answer. Let us hear your answer.
Shanna, thank you. Absolutely. And I was, I've been proud to, speak at rallies on reproductive justice, on, bans off our bodies. And I think having the candidates together and perhaps doing it on one of the campuses would be great. Let's see if we can, if you can help organize us and get us together. I think there'd be a whole lot of interest in that. Absolutely. So during the primary, I tried to canvass with as many other candidates as possible. And we all carried each other's literature. We're not going to win this individually. We got to win it together. So those of us who are now in the general election, we need to band together. We will be our campaign will be part of Mission for Arizona. But I know that doesn't include all the candidates. So the way we want to handle that is, we're supporting that, but we also want to organize some separate canvases with candidates that are not part of that, so that we can show a joint face here. Very important. And we got to make sure that people vote all the way down, Democratic, all the way down to the bottom of the ballot.
Well said. Let's turn to Mr. Energy Man, Robert Bulacek. Robert, go right ahead, unmute and ask your question.
Thank you. I apologize for sort of asking this question again. At a recent house party, I tried to ask this question and I did it badly, so I'd like to try again. What I'm getting at is that the Republican Party recently, or depending on how far you want to go back, has become what is not a normal political party. President Biden recently talked about, the sort of the fascist element within the Republican Party. In your answer previously, you talked about trying to find common ground and, things that you could cooperate on. I'd like to propose that there is got to be a more robust answer to that when the party that the Republican Party has become seems to be well on its way to fascism. It seems to me you can't deal with it as a normal party anymore. So have you given that more thought? And is there a more robust answer that Democrats in general can give on a national level about what we should be doing as a country and as a Democratic Party in trying to respond to the descent into fascism of the Republican Party?
Well, I think you have to separate out, the fight that we're in right now as from, what are we gonna do when we're in elected office on some of these, issues that we are grappling with, from, water to climate change to, our economy, et cetera. So I think you're correct. I mean, when you look at the candidates that the Republican Party has elected, they are extreme, and they are on the road to fascism, as you have expressed. Blake Masters, Carrie Lake, Mark Fincham, right up there at the top. And they have no respect for the voters or really the democratic process, from what I can tell. And they're willing to lie, steal our democracy. So that's the pitch battle we're in right now. And what I'm telling people is Ciscomani's part of that. You know, he may not be saying outrageous things every day like Blake Masters or Carrie Lake, but he also has said some extreme things about abortion, and he's been a loyal foot soldier, and I have no confidence that he wouldn't go along with their plans. I think the voters expect and want people that they elect, once they are in office, to do whatever they can to work on some of these difficult and tractable issues, as you know, from water to climate change to making sure that we have quality health care for kids and post-secondary education. So those are issues that, you know, yes, I will work across the aisle, as I did in the Arizona legislature, often with people that held extreme views, but were elected members. And in that legislature, you know, that was what one had to do in order to get anything done. So I'd say fight like heck right now to keep these extremists out and keep them from continuing to corrupt the Republican Party. And then if we can get in there, roll up our sleeves and work on the important issues that we need to work on.
All right, thank you, Kirsten. We have a question from our new member, George Beverly. George, go right ahead and unmute yourself and ask your single question, please.
Hello, thank you for taking my question. As you know, that the education across the nation has been bad, but mostly targeting towards the underserved communities. What can you do once you're elected to help bolster the increase of money federally, but also state, in order to help the underserved communities?
Absolutely. And we know that the underfunding of education has, disproportionately hurt communities of color. And that is just devastating to our country and to our communities. And it was, one of the, top issues that I fought on in the Arizona legislature was to fully fund our public schools and deal with the issues from, teacher shortages to, lack of books or, just everything as against the Republican majority that, as we saw last session here in Arizona, has so little care about our schools that over the clear will of the voters passed a universal voucher bill. So it is something where I'm convinced, yes, we need the federal government's help here. So I think funding is absolutely critical. There's a lot of important funding programs in Congress, from the Title I program for schools, low-income schools with large numbers of children that are on free and reduced lunch. Actually, there's a majority of our public schools here in Arizona receive Title I funding, to working on everything from teacher shortages to special education to everything else. So would love to talk with you further about maybe particular programs that you think are effective or could be more effective on the federal level to help with that issue. But this is a real, continues to be a top priority in Arizona as we are up against a Republican majority that is really abandoning our public schools.
Thank you for that, Kirsten. Let me turn now to Mike Bryan, who's been monitoring the chat, where I see there's lots of questions.
No.
Yeah, one of the first ones that was asked is they wanted an update on your immigration policy. That's going to be a major focus of the campaign, and there's a lot of fear mongering around immigration throughout Arizona in those races. Of course, Cisco Monte is going to put more of a happy face on it with his background and his American dream spiel. Can you tell us how you're going to address immigration in that context?
Well, I find that very ironic that Cisco Monte is taking that tact when I see no support from him for our dreamers. So, starting out with, whose American dream are we talking about? Let's look at the young people who have lived their entire lives in the United States, know no other country, were brought here as kids, and still are just in absolute limbo in terms of whether or not they can pursue their lives, their careers, their families. Literally, they could be, deported at any point. That isn't the American dream. I think we need to renew the American dream, to be honest, for students generally, and for all of us citizens. We're, I think, at the cusp where we're moving into something different here, and we need to create educational opportunity and a pathway to citizenship for dreamers and others. On immigration, there's the immigration issue, there's the border issue. We do need absolutely to secure our border. There are, drugs that come in over our border. The fentanyl issue is a real one. Opioid overdoses with the assistance of fentanyl is destroying our communities. We have drug smuggling. We do need to secure the border, but we don't need to do it with 13th century walls or with shipping containers that topple over. We need to do it with manpower and technology. And we need to fix our asylum process. That is broken. That is people have a right to apply for asylum. That determines their immigration status. People are waiting unreasonably long periods of time, or they are being denied the ability to apply for status. We need an orderly asylum process, and we need comprehensive immigration reform. And that's a pathway to citizenship for our dreamers and for others who are paying their taxes and abiding by our laws.
Thanks, great answer. So I just wanted to give you a thought on abortion. It occurs to me that if you're willing to justify using the power of the state to force any woman to give birth, you'll eventually come around to the viewpoint that you can force every woman to give birth. But that aside, I did have a question about the economy. As we're recovering from COVID's criminal handling of the COVID emergency, obviously the Republicans are going to make whatever hay they can out of our economic situation with inflation seeming to be coming under control. What are your priorities to talk about how our economy is doing?
Well, I think the Inflation Reduction Act is a very important step, as I mentioned. And I think the Senator Kelly's Chips and Science Act is also another good thing for our economy, from, making, chips that we need, as well as supporting scientific research. That is also critical here. We have a lot of scientific installations from, things at the university to startups and things like that here. So I think that we have a great deal to gain, as I mentioned before, from this transition to clean energy. And I think one of the things that somebody in Congress can do is make sure that we are on the map here. Not only on the map, we're the first stop for some of these federal investments, because I think we can match them. I think if we can support our educational institutions, we can really turn out the people who can fill the jobs that will be necessary to to really go forward in this new sort of world. Why not be a leader in the innovations that are going to be necessary in a clean energy economy? There's a ton to be done. And, you know, I'm a big supporter of small business. They've certainly had a really tough time here with COVID, inflation. We should do what we can to help them out. You know, buy American, buy Arizonan. That's also a way around our supply chain problems. Again, the Chips and Science Act is a step forward in that direction. And I think we can take more.
Great. Back to you, Larry.
And I know there was a mention in the chat that I just saw about Representative Daniel Hernandez. And yes, he reached out. He is supporting me. And I couldn't be more pleased. Primary is always a tough thing for any party, I think especially for Democrats that want to work together. Daniel's been my colleague in the Arizona legislature, and I welcome his help and any of you that supported him during the primary. We got a tough race to win. We got to do it together, and we're going to do it together.
All right, Kirsten, I wonder if you could sum up and bring our meeting to a conclusion. So Kirsten, what can we do to find out more about you? How can we support you? And what should we do to get you elected?
Well, thank you. Having this opportunity to talk to you today was a great experience and a great way to talk about my message. Anything that you can do to, we certainly are accepting volunteers. We are opening up an office on East Grant, around 5700 East Grant. We'll be sending out more information about that. The great thing about that is, you know, we'll have a place where people can come to know about, what canvases we're doing, what events we are speaking at, what are the topics of the day that we are working on between now and the general election. Certainly welcome your financial contribution, welcome you talking to your friends and neighbors. I know people don't think we have enough signs out. We're trying to work on that. We're certainly probably not going to be investing in the signs like my Republican opponent, but people need to know signs don't win elections. Outreach, knocking on doors, that's the most critical thing to do. So anything you can do to help us on that is important. And let's stay positive. I think, some of the trends that we're seeing that are very much affecting this race are happening all over the country. And I would say, things really are looking up. I think we've got this. We just have to stay strong and do that outreach, talk to as many people as possible. And really, we need to work, and we're trying to accept as many invitations as we can to get to the independent voters, those that we know are unhappy and very, very worried about what's going on with the Republicans. Our polling data showed us that not only are 60% of the voters in this district pro-choice, but 60% believe that the Republicans that are running for office are too extreme for Arizona. So they are not presenting a viable alternative, and we are. So we need to get that message out. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Kirsten. It was very informative and enlightening to hear you talk today. And thank you so much for attending our meeting. I know I'll be out knocking doors this coming weekend on your behalf, as well as all the Democratic candidates. And with that, I want to thank you for your time, Kirsten. Best of luck in the campaign. And I'm now going to end the general meeting of Democrats of Greater Tucson.